Verdun, a name carved into the flesh of a century, a word that echoes like a moan of stone and blood. 24 years after the great slaughter of 1916, war has returned. Different this time, faster, colder, more precise. But the soil still remembers. The trenches have vanished beneath wild grass, but under the earth, the shells still sleep, like scars that refuse to heal. In June 1940, the bells of Verdun fell silent once again. The townspeople watched the gray columns of the Wehrmacht march through, steel helmets glinting in the sun. And the old fortress, once a symbol of French resistance, fell without a cry. That morning, a cold wind swept across the Meuse. The shattered houses let the light in through their wounds. Walls still stood, as if ashamed to collapse. In one of these houses, near General Sorel Street, a door creaked open. Slowly, a soldier entered. He was barely 20, perhaps less. His German uniform was covered in dust, his helmet dull and scratched. His name was Wilhelm Hoffmann. Before the war, he played piano in Munich, in a small cafe where students came to forget hunger and despair. He had not been a soldier. He had not wanted to be one. But no one had asked his opinion. Now he walked among ruins, a notebook in his hand, looking for a place to rest. Around him, silence. No birds, no voices. Only the wind weaving through the stones, like the breath of an invisible organ. That's when he saw it. A shape massive, familiar. A piano. The instrument was covered in ash and dust, but it still stood upright, like a stubborn survivor. The wood had blackened, the varnish had cracked, but the keys were still there. He placed a trembling hand on the keyboard. A note escaped. Just one. Weak, cracked, but pure. Another followed. Then another. And suddenly the silence of Verdun broke apart. A few clumsy chords, then a fragile, hesitant theme. The music, like a prayer, slipped between the stones and rubble. The notes rose, bounced off broken walls, fell again onto shattered floors. It was dissonant, imperfect, but profoundly human. Wilhelm closed his eyes. For a moment, he was no longer a soldier. No longer in France. There was no war. There was only a boy and a piano. But somewhere, behind a cracked wall, someone was listening. A woman, hiding for days in what was left of her home. Her name was Claire Moreau, 40 years old, a widow for 24. Her husband, Paul, had died in Verdun in 1916. And now in that same place, she was hearing a German soldier play the piano. She didn't understand. She didn't want to understand, and yet she couldn't move. The music passed through her chest like a forbidden memory. Each note woke something buried: faces, laughter, a hand on a piano, a different time. She closed her eyes, and tears rose unbidden. In the street outside, soldiers sometimes passed, but no one paid attention to this house. Too damaged, too silent, and yet this piano had brought back its heartbeat. Wilhelm kept playing, unaware he was not alone. He replayed the pieces he knew from memory, sometimes just with the tips of his fingers, as if afraid to disturb the dead. He played Schubert, Brahms, then melodies of his own, woven from sorrow and light. His face changed. The stiffness of the uniform melted away. His features became young again, tired but alive. Evening fell over Verdun. The light turned golden, then gray, then blue. The wind sighed through the ruins. The piano grew quiet. Claire stayed in the shadows, motionless. When the last note faded, she could hear only her own breathing, and the silence, the heavy kind. She knew she should hate him, but something had cracked. A single thought crossed her mind like a whisper. Even among ruins, music does not die. That night, in the darkness of Verdun, a piano still played, faintly, a sound of life in a dead world. That evening, without knowing it, Wilhelm Hoffmann and Claire Moreau had written the first note of an impossible story. The following days, Wilhelm returned. Every evening, at the same hour, he crossed the empty street, entered the ruined house, and sat before the piano. He played softly, for hours. Sometimes he closed the door. Other times he left it open, perhaps hoping someone might listen. Claire, hidden behind the cracked wall, never missed a night. She didn't know why. Maybe to remind herself that she was still alive. One night, rain fell on Verdun. Wilhelm sat at the piano, but his hands trembled. He played wrong notes, stopped, sighed. He rested his head on the keys, and then he heard a voice, weak, hesitant. "You're playing too fast." He froze. The voice came from the back of the corridor. He turned. In the shadows stood Claire, small, upright, her eyes steady and hard. He didn't understand. She stepped closer, her fingers brushing the piano's surface. "It was my husband's," she said quietly. Wilhelm said nothing. She sat down. "He loved Schubert too," she whispered. Then, without another word, Wilhelm placed his hands on the keys again. He started over slower this time. And Claire closed her eyes. That night, there were no occupiers or enemies, just two exhausted souls bound by a melody. Winter settled over Verdun. Snow covered the ruins. The war outside raged on, but inside that shattered house, a fragile piece had found a home. Wilhelm helped Claire repair the roof. She gave him soup, sometimes bread. They spoke little. Language and fear still divided them, yet the silence between them was no longer hostile. One morning, Wilhelm found an old photograph in a drawer beneath the piano. A young French officer smiling in uniform. On the back, a dedication written in faded ink. "To my beloved Claire, may music keep us safe." Verdun, 1916. Wilhelm set it back, shaken. The piano had become a bridge between two wars, two generations, two enemies. One evening in January, German officers passed down the street. They needed shelter for a patrol. One stopped in front of the house. Claire froze. Wilhelm stepped outside, saluted, and explained he was already stationed there for repair work. The officers hesitated, then moved on. That day he had protected her. Days grew longer. The war was turning. The German army was retreating. Fear was changing sides. Wilhelm knew the end was near. He played more often now, whole pieces, loud, desperate. Sometimes Claire listened from the courtyard, eyes lost in the sky. One evening he asked, "Why don't you leave?" She smiled sadly. "Where would I go? I've lost everything, twice, and you." He didn't answer. March 1944. Bombings returned to Verdun. The Allies were approaching. Roads were filled with civilians, wounded soldiers, stray animals. The city burned. Inside the house, the piano trembled under each explosion. Wilhelm said he would leave. Claire lowered her gaze. "You can't stay. They'll kill you." He nodded, but he didn't go. One morning, he found on the table a folded handkerchief. Inside, a small metal pulse. "It will bring you luck," she said softly. He kept it in his pocket. The last night, neither of them slept. They sat side by side at the piano. Wilhelm played slowly. Claire sang under her breath, old words from long ago, a song she hadn't dared to hum since 1916. When the last note faded, he rose, looked at her, and said only, "Thank you, thank you!" The next day, the German troops withdrew from Verdun. In the confusion, Wilhelm was captured by a French patrol. He was sent to Fort Souvy, now a temporary prison. Claire never saw him again. She waited, for months, then for years. For months, then for years, the piano remained in the same room, motionless, as if time itself were afraid to touch it. Sometimes she ran her hand along the keys without pressing them, just to feel the presence of those she had lost. In 1948, a postman brought an envelope from Germany. Inside, a letter signed Wilhelm Hoffmann. "I survived," it said. "I'm back in Munich. I repair pianos now. I built one like yours. Every evening I play the same melody, the one we shared in your house. If I ever return to Verdun, I hope you'll listen one more time." Claire never answered. She kept the letter in the piano drawer, beside her husband's photograph. Years passed. A German journalist visited Verdun to write about reconciliation. He knocked on an old door. A woman answered. He asked for Madame Moreau. She smiled faintly. "That's me." He handed her a small tape reel, a message someone asked me to deliver. She played it. Music rose. The same melody, faint but pure. At the end, a man's voice whispered, "For Claire?" Thank you for teaching me that music can survive everything." She wept for a long time, then sat at the piano again. Her fingers shook, but the sound lived on. The years stretched like quiet seasons. Verdun rebuilt itself, stone by stone, yet some houses stayed empty, as if their walls refused to forget. Claire grew old. Her hair turned white, her steps slower, her silence deeper. Each Sunday she cleaned the piano, dusting the blackened wood, breathing on the ivory keys. She rarely played, not because she had forgotten, but because the music hurt too much. In the 1960s, neighborhood children came to her door. They wanted stories about the war. She welcomed them, gave them apple juice, showed them an old photograph of her husband. Then she told them about a young German soldier who once played piano among the ruins. The children listened, wide-eyed. One asked, "Weren't you afraid?" She smiled, "Yes, but fear changes nothing. Kindness does." Verdun held a ceremony for Franco-German peace. Veterans, families, and officials from both countries gathered at Douaumont. Among the crowd, an old woman walked slowly, leaning on a cane. Claire, a military band, played the European anthem. The melody echoed through the hills. Claire closed her eyes. She heard a piano, Wilhelm's, Paul's, all the men who had believed music could soften the world. She returned home before nightfall. On the table, a letter waited. German stamp. Munich. She hesitated, then opened it. "Madame Moreau, if you read this, it means your house still stands. I don't know if you're alive. If you are, know that I still play. The piano from Verdun is here in my workshop. I'm repairing it key by key. The white ones sound again. The black ones resist like you. I've never forgotten. Your silence taught me more than all the wars." Wilhelm Hoffmann. Claire smiled. For the first time in years, she laughed softly. Then she stood, opened the piano lid, and began to play. That night, in sleeping Verdun, people said they heard music. Some thought it was a dream. Others swore it was the same melody that once floated through the ruins. The next morning, Claire Moreau was found at peace, sitting beside the piano, a faint smile on her face. Months later, a crate arrived at Verdun's town hall. Sender, Munich. Inside, a piano carefully packed and restored. On its wood, carved by hand, were the words, "For the woman who gave music back to the war." Officials placed the instrument in the local museum. A small plaque read, "Piano found in Verdun, restored by a former German soldier. Anonymous donation, 1971." The story could have ended there, but in 1990, a young journalist researching Verdun's memory found, in German archives, an old magnetic tape labeled, "Verdun, 1944 Hoffmann." He listened. Footsteps, breathing, then a few notes of piano. In the distance, an explosion. The music resumed, fragile yet tender. The journalist located Hoffmann's family. One of Wilhelm's sons answered. He said his father had never stopped speaking of Verdun, nor of the French woman who had let him play when she had had every reason to silence him. Wilhelm Hoffmann had died in 1984. His ashes scattered on a field along the Franco-German border. In 1992, his son traveled to Verdun. He entered the museum, stood before the piano. The curator showed him a medallion fixed inside. Engraved on it were the words, "Paul Moreau, 1916. The son remained still, then whispered, "So it was true." He phoned a number from an old notebook. An elderly woman answered, Claire's great niece. They met the next day. She told him everything, the war, the piano, the music. Then she brought out a small tin box. Inside lay Wilhelm's last letter and a brass key tied to a ribbon. She said this key opened something she never had the courage to open. The woman explained. They searched the house. Behind a wall, they found a small chest. Inside, papers, a photo, and another tape labeled, "Verdun, August, 1941 melody." They played it at the museum, on an old tape recorder. The sound crackled, but the melody was clear, not Schubert or Brahms, something else entirely. A simple air, Melancholy, composed by Wilhelm himself. At the end, a woman's voice murmured, "You're playing too fast." Then a soft laugh. The son closed his eyes. He knew. It was Claire's voice. The recording was restored. In 1994, for the 50th anniversary of liberation, Verdun held a tribute concert. The restored piano stood center stage. A young German pianist sat down. In the audience, French and German veterans, children, families. The hall fell silent. The pianist began to play the rediscovered melody. The first notes were uncertain, then grew stronger, richer. Faces tightened. Others softened. Some cried. Others simply closed their eyes. When the final note faded, no one clapped right away. The silence that followed meant more than applause. The mayor of Verdun spoke. For centuries, Verdun was a symbol of suffering. Today, it stands for reconciliation. This piano survived 2 wars. But above all, it proved there exists a music no bomb can silence, the music of the human heart. Cameras filmed the moment. The image traveled the world. Some saw an anecdote, others a parable. But for those who knew the story, it was far more the end of a conversation begun 50 years earlier, between a German soldier and a French woman, bound forever by a few notes among ruins. In the 2000s, the Verdun piano was displayed in the Museum of Peace. Every morning, visitors gathered around it. Some left flowers, others words. On the wall beside it, a simple inscription read, "Even among ruins, music does not die." Each year, on June 21st, France's Music Day, a guest pianist plays the same melody. Always the same, always slow, gentle, full of quiet peace. No one knows where exactly Claire and Wilhelm first met. Was it chance? Destiny? What is certain is that their story crossed wars, borders, and time itself to remind us that humanity belongs to no flag. Verdun today is calm. The hills are green. The fields bloom again. And sometimes at dusk, when the wind moves between the stones, you can almost hear a melody, simple, fragile, like a memory. And perhaps, somewhere between earth and sky, a soldier and a woman are still listening.